Hey everybody, welcome and thanks for checking out this video. This is a time-lapse of an oil painting of a skeleton. Starting out here, I've got a grid on my canvas. This is an 8x10 canvas, and I drew my skeleton on there real quickly. And now I'm doing my underpainting here. For the underpainting, I'm using odorless mineral spirits. I'm just using one color here to go through and kind of lay out my lights and darks. If you need it lighter, you add more mineral spirits. If you need it darker, you leave the paint a little bit thicker. Underpainting is important because it preps the canvas for receiving your actual oil medium, which is to say when you're mixing your paints with actual oil rather than mineral spirits. I usually try to do my underpainting on a Friday, and that way it can dry over the weekend, and most of the time it's pretty dry, ready for you to go on the next day or Monday. So now I'm going through and I'm starting in my background. If you noticed, I started with my darkest layer of leaves there, going through and laying those in, and then building forward with lighter layers of leaves on top of there. Another note on the underpainting, it preps the canvas so that it can receive the oil paint. As I mentioned, it's also nice to not have to work just on a white canvas because the white is so blinding. It can kind of skew your eye for the different color interactions that are going on. If you have a sort of a more neutral zone to start from, it is helpful. It really does make a big difference in how the paint lays on the canvas. I've done paintings with and without underpainting, and it's just, you have to work it a lot more to work it into an unprepped canvas. So I'm going around here working on these flowers now that are going on top of my leaves. These are all different types of hibiscus flower. As with anything, whatever you're doing, you're starting farthest in the background and working your way forward. Here I tried to set some kind of base color on my petals, and then I went in and worked on that central darker part of the flower and then worked my way forward. A simple way to give depth to your flowers is just to add a little bit of darkness to the petals in the background. Always use references if you can. Google has everything, so Google image search, use a reference. It's always going to turn out better than if you try and invent it from your mind. Next up, I got to the actual skeleton part. When I started out, I wasn't exactly sure what tone I wanted to go with for this skeleton, so obviously I'm using a lot of white here, but then I used both a blue and also a kind of a dark green there on the jaw, which kind of gave it more of an old skeleton look. But then I kind of settled on blue and I went through here. Once again, trying to build from the back and move forward, so as I hop around, I'm trying to start on those bones in the background and work my way forward, because your edges are just sharper, your layers work better if you work back to front, and you don't end up doing this really tricky brush work where you're painting something that's behind your object and having to be really delicate with your brush strokes so that you don't end up overlapping your background onto your object that's in the foreground. A nice aspect of painting the skeleton was that, so there you can see I'm having to jump back into the background to do the space between those ribs. Painting the skeleton is that I really just started out with, I had white as my base color, and then I just add blue and add a little bit more blue for each part so that I could add more in-depth shadows. In my mind, it seemed like the skeleton painting was pretty simple, but actually going in and doing all this ribcage was the challenging part, making sure I had all the ribs lined up correctly, which is one reason I'm really glad I used. The grids method to begin with, to make sure I had everything lined up. A lot of people think grids are for amateurs, but I think they're for people who like to be more accurate. And the more you do them, the faster you get at them, so it really is not a big time delay for the reward in the end for your piece. Going in on the actual skull now, I was a little disappointed in the depth in the eye sockets here. I really wanted them, the eye sockets are like really where the meat of the memento mori comes in, to use a misplaced metaphor for a skeleton painting. I was pretty happy with the teeth here. Had a lot of detail there. And then the final thing I did is I went in to add some color. It was just very blue, so I went in and I reflected the different flowers around onto the piece to give it a little bit more visual interest. Hope that was interesting / helpful. Have a great day.